Hi, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Spirit Focus with Robert Painley. Tonight is going to be an interesting night. We're sticking with the haunted theme here that we've been sticking with because it's just showed so much interest, and people have had so many of these experiences themselves. And I'm finding a lot of people who just want to share their stories, and I want to share their stories as well because I think it's important that people kind of understand how just everyday people wind up in situations that sometimes they don't expect. And sometimes when those situations happen when we're younger, and as we grow up, we may encounter different circumstances and situations where these things occur to us. And what should we do at that point? How do we handle that type of a situation? So today we want to kind of explore a family that had a situation here that they kind of grew up with in the home. They moved into a home, and I'll let them tell their story. But what happened? Sometimes there's like I told you the stories from myself growing up that I had spirits in the home, but they never stayed. This is a story of spirits who kind of took up residence and were kind of additional people living in the home, and not on the deed perhaps, but living there nonetheless. So I want to introduce a couple of people. One you know very well, Teri Angel. Teri has a show, a few shows that she works on. Obviously, you'll know her from Coffee and Conversation. You'll know her from, so many other. And what's your other shows, Teri? You've got Coffee and Conversation and Gratitude Happy Hour that you were doing today. My mind's just slipping. So, by the way, if anybody sees, we have lightning outside. So if you see lightning coming from the side of me here, or flashes of light, it could be my sparkling personality, or it could be the lightning. I'll let you decide. So Teri, you know well, and so today we're going to take Teri out of her host mode, where she's with Coffee Conversation, and we're going to have cocktails in conversation here on my show today, and we want to kind of go through, and Teri had some experiences that I found fascinating. I don't like to talk to people much before they appear on the show because I want it to be an organic conversation about what happened and that sort of thing. And so that I can kind of take my own take. What am I getting for it? What am I feeling from it from a mediumistic perspective? But Teri is a gifted medium in her own right. And she grew up with a family, a couple of sisters and a brother in her family. And one of her sisters also is going to be joining us this evening, Sheila. And I'm going to let Teri come on, but I don't want you to look at Teri tonight again, as last week, as Teri as the host and things, just as Teri, coming on here and telling her story of what happened to her as she was growing up and what she maybe took from that experience. So, Teri Angel, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for being here tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Robert, for having me. And yes, this is awesome to not have to host, but to actually be on to share.
It's always easier being the guest.
Yes, it is. And my beautiful sister Sheila is here. So we come from a big family. Okay. I know you mentioned a couple of sisters and a brother. I have 6 sisters and 6 brothers.
I didn't realize it was that big. Sorry.
So we have quite the family, and Sheila is the baby and princess. We won't go there. This is not about her. This is about our experience.
That's Dr. Phil, a whole other story, a whole other show. But why don't we start here? Why don't we maybe start with things that people don't know about you? I mean, they know you as a host, they know you as talking about a show. But what's one thing maybe that you've never shared out there that people wouldn't know about you that I think they might find fascinating?
Wow.
The dog's telling you, don't say anything, Teri. Don't say anything. Or how about you, Sheila? Do you have anything that
that was my fear. I'm like, I'm going to bring her on and she's going to tell all of my childhood secrets.
I already talked to her secretly on the side to make sure that happened today. So anyway, oops, sorry, the secret's out there.
So what were you saying?
So Teri,
that was my fear, actually.
Oh, that I was going to tell.
Okay.
I'll let you tell on yourself. Okay.
Oh.
So a secret nobody knows about me.
See, it's kind of interesting.
I know, right? Well, I don't know if it's a secret or not, but I have played a part in a movie. I was an extra, and so I
Oh,
have
really?
a movie,
In
and
what movie?
that was always one of my, like, on my bucket list of things that I wanted to do in life, was to be at a movie studio and be like involved in all the ins and outs of making a movie. So yeah, I was in the movie Parenthood, and I got to meet Ron Howard, who directed Parenthood. And
Fantastic.
yeah, and I got to meet Keanu Reeves and Mary Steenburgen, some of the really big names now.
Were you seen in the final cut?
I was at the part on the raceway where the car crashed, so everybody was paying so much attention to the car that none of us were really focused.
But you're in it, which is a good thing.
So,
Well, it's always great when you get to live out one of your dreams. It's always great when you get to have that accomplishment. It's fun.
yeah,
Fantastic.
like that's something, that's special, and so you have that the rest of your
Nice.
life. And I think that was pretty cool. Yeah, I never
Really nice.
aspired to be an actress, but just to be involved in all of that. It took us a week to film that movie, and you know what it's like, Robert, to do a
Absolutely.
production and be involved in all the behind the scenes stuff. So that was pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
I don't think people realize how much work goes into. I mean, I've done 55 hours on one project where it gets down to an 8-minute cut, and so it's a lot of time and it's a lot of effort, and it's amazing how much work and effort you can tell in a short segment of time when it's edited properly and well. It's amazing what you can get through, but you don't realize how much work it is and how much behind the scenes. Now that you've done it, it kind of ruins a little bit, I think, movie making, because I know the angles. So that's a drone shot, or that's footage that they took off the internet, or you can kind of see some of that stuff that's incorporated in now. Some of the magic goes away when you're involved in those types of projects, but it's still fun to watch and be a part of. Absolutely.
Yeah, it really is, and it was amazing because it took us a week to film that part, and it was like 2 or 3 minutes in the movie.
Wonderful. And how about you, Sheila? Where do you live, Sheila?
I live in Kentucky. I live in
Okay.
Middlesboro, if you know where that's at.
Murfreesboro?
Middlesboro.
No, I don't know where Middlesboro is.
Okay. Have you ever heard of the tunnel, like the famous tunnel from Tennessee, Virginia,
Absolutely.
Kentucky?
Been
Okay.
through it. Yeah.
It is right there, bordering
Okay.
Virginia and Tennessee.
That's pretty rural.
Mm-hmm. Very rural.
Well, hopefully the internet connection will survive through this process.
I hope so.
She
You
lives
never
on
know.
top of a mountain, Robert.
Okay.
What'd you say?
I said you live on top of a mountain.
It's not that bad.
It's bad.
It's not that bad.
Well, let's talk
Does not use
about
it.
some things that for our viewers out there. Kind of, I kind of want to go through your story, but I kind of want to set it up a little bit, because let's let them know, this is rural Kentucky where you grew up, right? Correct?
Mhm.
Yes, very.
So, and how big was the house? How many bedrooms were in the house with the 12 children there and that sort of thing? Was it a large house?
It was a large house. Not everybody was there at the same time.
Okay.
We were spread out, like, a couple years in between each
Sure.
one.
Yeah.
So I don't even know. I can't even tell you how many were there at one time. I just know a lot.
Okay.
Uh,
So
talk
I
about
think
talk about Brady Bunch times 2, kind of like that.
sure.
We're all on top of each other.
Yeah.
But the house, it was pretty big, and
And one story, 2 stories, or what was the house like?
one story.
Okay. And so everybody was kind of spread over one story, and I'm assuming, I think you said it was in a very rural section. So where were how far were your closest neighbors and that thing from the house? Just kind of give viewers and kind of an idea of what the situation was like when you were starting to have these experiences.
Yeah, back then, growing up, there wasn't anybody really close to the house on either side, but across the street, we were like kind of high up on the hill, and then there were neighbors that were down lower. We had a flood oh God, I don't remember what year that flood happened, but I remember all the neighbors bringing stuff up to our house for protection.
Oh, wow.
Flood. So they were like across the street and down on the mountain or down in the fields. So it wasn't like there was somebody breathing through your window like it is
Sure.
today's
Sure.
developments. Yeah, it was very rural. This is in the coal mining part of Kentucky. Our
Okay.
dad was in the coal mines, and yeah, it was.
How old was the house?
Wow, it was old. I don't know what year it was.
It was very old. Very old. Big rooms.
Okay. Very nice. So, sounds like a beautiful place to grow up, though.
I don't know. I couldn't
Or
wait
not.
to leave. I couldn't wait to leave.
It had its own beauty. It was like we said, very rural.
Yeah.
And if you can envision the houses back then, like in the 50s, that type of era
Sure.
where the houses were not, there was nothing fancy about them. It was
Sure.
just big.
Yeah.
And so we had lots of kids in the same room,
Yeah.
and
Sure.
and lots of and everybody was on top of each other. We were always fighting, always getting in trouble.
Always.
We got in a lot of trouble when we were
A typical large family. That's good.
yeah.
So tell me. So let's like kind of start on the haunting. When did you kind of first notice that you noticed something was amiss in the house?
Well, for me, it was the noise, and I remember it as long as I lived in the house. I don't
Okay.
ever remember not having this noise happening at nighttime. And
Okay.
that's when we noticed it the most, or when I noticed it the most. I would go to bed, and my bed was by the window, and I would hear footsteps outside. Now, the house had a porch, an outside porch that kind of wrapped around almost like an L shape. And then by my window, there was a swing that was attached from the roof. So at nighttime, I would hear the footsteps. And in the beginning, look out the window and there's nobody there. And then all of a sudden the swing would start swinging, and it was an old house. So it would like creak, make a noise as the swing would move, and nobody there. So this happened pretty much every night. And I wasn't the only one hearing it. Everybody in the house heard the noises that were coming through at night. And all of us knew that it was there, but it was kind of like you don't talk about it. You just kind of
Yeah.
pull the covers over your head and hope that it goes away and doesn't come to you.
Now, did Sheila notice this? Did Sheila notice this as well? The same type of energy. Sheila, did you kind of notice or hear anything out of the porch or the swing for yourself at the house?
Yeah, I did hear the swing. I heard the wood, like walking on the wood. The rockers, we had rocking chairs that would rock,
Okay.
but we had doors that would open. It was just very, especially at night, you could hear more. It's when you noticed it more.
Sure. Sure. Now, did you ever say anything to your parents or talk amongst your siblings about any of this?
To each other, I did.
Okay. And so did you and Teri talk about it when you were younger?
I don't remember talking to her specifically about it till I was older.
Okay. Interesting. Teri, what did you think when you told, or did your other siblings ever say anything to you? And then, or how did they accept that information? Or they just kind of, when you said it, they acknowledged that, oh yeah, we hear it too.
The ghost that was there. My sister Billy is watching. I was hoping she was going to be on here tonight. That my internet was unstable. Okay, there I am. But I think she was more scared because that's her comments. If we talk about this, and we do talk about it now as adults,
Sure.
And her comment was, it was scary. And so that was kind of the response with the siblings. Everybody we accepted that it was there, but it was like, we just didn't know what it was. I could feel the energy of it.
Sure.
And, just like, I knew it was okay. I could talk and I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah.
But everybody else was pulling the cover over their heads until the noise stopped. And,
Oh.
it didn't go on all night, but it was a nightly occurrence.
Did it happen relatively the same time every night, or was it at different times, or?
Yeah, pretty much the same time every night.
Well, so let's tie this into your mediumship ability. When did you, kind of when you knew that you could talk and hear and see spirit, were you seeing other things in the house, or was it always kind of started this way and then you moved from this experience into other types of experience and into clairvoyance or into other types of things?
Yeah, there was always a lot of energy in the house. A lot of
And
energy.
do other your
There was a lot of kid energy, but there was a lot of just comings and goings. And that's what I noticed. It was like, there would be a movement and I thought it would be somebody had gotten up out of bed, but everybody was asleep or still laying still.
Okay.
But there was movement that happened inside the house, as well as this one that stepped on the porch and decided to go swing every night. So yeah, there was a lot of that.
Did you ever find out who that might be or sense who it might be in relationship to the house?
Intuitively, I was putting two and two together, and as I got to be comfortable with the spirit that was there, I'm pretty sure it was someone who had died there on the property.
Okay.
One of the prior.
What was the property like around you? Did you have other things that you grew up? It's rural Kentucky, so were trading posts or anything around this area that might lend to some more kind of elevated energy?
No, there was like a little general store. We had a barn in the backyard, and there was another house above us, like farther up on the hill. Yeah. So
there was a cemetery. There was a cemetery.
Yes.
So the cemetery was next to the property.
Right next.
Close to the property.
Okay. Did you ever feel like maybe some of this energy may be coming from that direction? Because if you have a lot of passing spirits and you have this ability, sometimes you're a little bit of a magnet, obviously, being that close to that type of an environment.
Yeah, obviously, because the same thing happens to me even now. There's spirits that come all the time and pass through. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that it did have a lot to do with that. And in fact, my sister Billy, who is not here with us tonight, lives right across the street from that cemetery still. And there's a lot of paranormal activity at her house. And I feel that every time I go there. And she has seen that movement, seen somebody walking through the house.
Okay.
So it's still there, still very prevalent.
So you're not the only one in the family that has a gift, apparently, correct?
No, we all saw and heard it.
Are there any other mediums in the family, or no?
No,
Did your mom or dad, or which did it come from? Any of the family, or you just got it?
No, they never really talked about anything like that. I'm pretty sure my mom did. She's Cherokee descent, and I think she has had a lot of abilities.
Interesting.
That were just kind of sitting there dormant, that she didn't really, talk about a whole lot. But I'm pretty sure she knew all of this that was going on. And there was one day I was homesick from school, and there was a knock on the door. I can't remember who else was there, another sister, I think. But there was a very loud knock on the door, and we all went to the door because this is a rural area. You don't have people come and knock on your door unless there's like an emergency with a neighbor or something. And there was nobody there, and we all heard it. So there were things like that happened as well.
And it still happens. That still happens.
Now, how long after Teri left the house were you in that house, Sheila?
She went to college, and then I was probably there, I don't know, 3-4 years after.
And being a baby of the family, when a lot of those other siblings may have gone already out of the house, were you kind of like the focus point for a lot of that spirit activity at that point?
After that, I didn't notice it as much.
Okay.
I still noticed it, but not as much.
Now,
So
how far do you live right now from your childhood home?
probably an hour.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, a good hour.
So when you go back and visit your sister who lives across the street from the cemetery, do you still feel, how does that make you feel to go back there after you grew up with this as a child?
It doesn't make me feel weird or like I feel anything there. I have felt something in my sister's home. I
Okay.
can feel something in there, but I've felt stuff in other homes where I moved to.
Okay.
So, but I do feel things.
Do you sense anything at the house that you're in currently?
Yes.
Do you really? What's going on at your house?
Okay. So my husband built the home several years ago, probably 15 years ago, maybe. And so I moved in, we've been married almost a year. So he had noticed stuff before I got here. So I feel like it was already here.
Okay.
But you can hear movement here a lot. You can,
Like footsteps or just, what is it? What's the movement sound?
yeah, like sometimes the washer and dryer kicks on automatically in the night, or sometimes it feels like somebody's walking through the house. The doors will open.
Okay.
Sometimes. Our cover, this is the weirdest thing, but of the day I can make the bed and it's light as a feather. Like I can make it, but at night I cannot pull it up on me. I can't pull the cover on me. It's like something is pulling the cover down.
Wow.
So, and my husband too, and he's a big guy, but he cannot pull the cover to him. And then
go ahead.
This happens about every night.
Really? Wow. What are you getting a bad feeling about it, about the energy or what's causing it, or?
No, it makes me mad. It irritates me because I don't have any cover. So at first I was like, what the heck is going on? And then I was just like, this is pissing me off. Why do I not have cover on me? But it's like we wake up and the cover is stuffed between the footboard and the mattress every night. So I don't know what's up with that.
That's interesting. Well, I don't know if you've ever talked to Teri or what you've tried. Have you tried to do anything to make it stop?
I did. She had told me some things to do in the bedroom, and I did. And it is a lot calmer. I have to say it's a lot calmer. It's a lot peaceful, more peaceful, and I sleep well. I don't have a problem with it keeping me up. I don't worry about it. So
well, it's good to have somebody like Teri in your family to be able to help when that sort of situation happens. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know in my own family, when family members have issues, it's not something that's discussed in my family much either, even though they know what I do. And, I'm obviously doing these shows and that sort of thing. They don't really talk about it, but once there's an issue, I get the phone call. It's like, what can I do? How can I, and it's good to be able to help. It feels, and try to tap into that energy. I'm glad Teri's there to help. Nice. Teri,
what? Can also, sorry.
Go ahead.
You can smell cigarette smoke or pipe tobacco in the night. Certain smells. And my sister Billy, that's not here, stayed here, and she, which I had too before, but she smelled breakfast cooking at 4 a.m. Wow. So, and somebody sat on her. I forgot about that. Somebody sat on her legs in the bed. So I think
I'm gonna reject the invitation to come to your home to visit. No,
yeah, it does not want you to sleep in the bedroom. I don't know why.
Interesting. And that's every bedroom, or just the master bedroom?
It's our room, the master.
Wow. Well, it'll be fun to see if you know it continues or if it continues to go down. You know, keep Teri posted so I know.
Okay.
And Teri, what else happened to you at that house that made you nervous or happened all the time? And you said you had visitors all the time. So do you think that was coming from the cemetery, the proximity to the cemetery, or do you think it was just they were attracted to your light? Like I get things, you know, just popping into the house every time, all the time, that you just kind of hang out, look at you, and then take off, and I never feel their energy again. But sometimes they'll linger and they want to give a message. So, you know, were you feeling that, experiencing that in this house the entire time you were growing up?
Yeah, pretty much it was there the entire time. I think I moved into that house when I was around the second grade. So
Okay.
I was young when we moved
Yeah.
into the house. And I almost feel like some of it though followed the family from the house we were in before. That
Oh,
was the
really?
I
Okay.
got was it was that same energy because it was familiar. It was a familiar energy. So
Okay.
some of it, not all of it. There were those that I didn't care for what I was feeling, but there was some that was familiar. And one thing that in that era, and especially in the rural and where we grew up, if somebody died, the casket was laid out. They call it laid out in the
Sure.
home.
Sure.
There was, that person laying there, and we all were there where that was. So I'm thinking that some of that might have been ancestral energy that was still hanging out with the family.
Okay. So you don't think it was residual? You think that it was actually a ghost, and this is was his habit?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm almost positive of it. Yeah.
So did it ever come? Did it ever come into the house? Did you ever feel this energy in the house rather than just outside?
Um, the one that was outside pretty much stayed outside. I don't
Okay.
ever remember those footsteps coming in the house. It was like the same pattern every night,
Okay.
almost like clockwork. You had asked before about if it was the same time. It was like you knew, when you got to bed, it was like everything was supposed to be very quiet when everybody
Okay.
went to bed. And it was like that's when it started up, and that's when we heard it.
Did
And
it ever occur to you to walk outside and maybe confront ever, or you were just too scared at the time to be able to do that?
kidding me?
Well, what would you now?
Besides, we had bears in those hills.
Would you do it today?
Yes.
Okay.
Knowing what I do now, I would
Absolutely.
definitely.
Yeah.
I would
I think that's all of our growth. I think myself too. I felt so bad. I had all those visitors. My entire childhood would stand next to the bunk bed, and I couldn't hear them. I didn't understand what they were saying, but they were trying. And we could see their mouth moving, but I didn't understand what they were saying. And now I look back and I feel so bad. I wasn't able to help them right at the time. And then as I got older, I got terrified because some of them got really a little nasty and aggressive. And then the full circle is now I just walk out into the into the room here. It's like, how can I help you? And it's kind of interesting how spirit takes you on that journey if you stick with it, and kind of allows you to get comfortable with it, figure it out, and then allows you to find peace with it in some way where you and I know our own mortality. We know it's awaiting for us, and we talk to spirit all the time. And most of the time they're just trying to either figure things out on their own, or trying to get a message, or need help in crossing, or whatever is holding them there, and they may need that help. And that's where we come in as mediums and really try to help that soul on their continuing journey. And do you ever look back with regret at this point with what you may have been able to do there, or not really?
Oh,
You don't
yeah,
think about it?
absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't feel any fear like any of them
Yeah.
were, trying to hurt us in any way.
Yeah.
And like even with Sheila's spirit that's been hanging out with her, when I was there, I didn't feel anything that was malicious from it. It was just kind of prankster stuff. And I think it knows that she's responding and being irritated.
Yep.
And so it's like, let me just have fun. I'm here, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna have fun. And
Oh yeah, that's fun.
it does at your expense. But Sheila, wasn't there also something that I gave you that would like move around at night?
Yeah, unfortunately. I
And what is
hated
it?
it. Okay. So now, you know how the Elf on the Shelf is so popular.
Sure.
So everybody has one for their kids. Well, she got me one. And when I was small, she got me one, and it literally danced every night. It
Wow.
danced. And it would dance with the light out, pitch black, because we had no night light. We had no light on. You slept in the dark. But I could see it, and not only could I see it, uh, my brother could see it. Everyone who was in the room with me could see it.
Like on the floor or on a mantle top, or where was it, Sheila?
Through the air,
Through the
through the
air.
air, from one side of the room to the other side of the room. And it was made just like the Elf on the Shelves that they have now. Its legs
Yeah.
were crossed over. So in that position, it was going through the room from one side to the other. And we would
Kind
watch
of
it, and
dancing or just floating through the air?
kind of dancing because its legs were crossed. They were kind of moving.
Yeah.
And we would talk about it. We were awake, and we would talk about seeing it and watching it. So
That would
this
have
went
to
on.
be terrifying.
Yeah, but we couldn't move. We couldn't tell because we were supposed to be asleep. So,
Okay.
you just go back to sleep.
Did
You
you feel
couldn't tell.
threatened? You didn't feel threatened by it or anything. You just
No, not really, but I didn't enjoy it. I didn't want to see it.
okay.
In fact,
Wow.
I hated it.
How long did that go on for?
I don't even remember what happened to it actually because I was small.
And
But
have you now with the little Elf on the Shelf, craze out there? Have you replaced it and bought another one to put in your house?
heck no. No.
I would assume that would be the answer.
Heck no. Never.
I could imagine. It's funny, Sheila, when years ago, and I don't think I've really told many people this story, but again, sometimes they find interesting ways to scare you to do things. And I was at my brother and sister-in-law's house, and their children, two girls, were very, very young at the time. They went away for a week, and I kind of was at their house sitting up in rural Ohio. And so I was there, and I was staying in the guest room, which was downstairs. It was a split level home. I was downstairs, in a guest room downstairs. And I was watching TV, and I started to hear noises upstairs. And I was alone in the house again. It was pretty rural. It was kind of in the city, but the city was, the houses were spread apart. And I didn't know what was going on because there should be nothing in this house. It's about 11 o'clock at night. And I didn't know what was going on. And I kept hearing like voices and things. And again, I've heard stuff and seen stuff all my life. So it wasn't that unusual, but it's disconcerting when you're alone in a house and it's not my house and it's unfamiliar to me a little bit. And so I started to walk up the stairs and I'm hearing voices. I think, well, who's in the house? So I walk up the stairs, walk up to the front door and then walk up into the living room. And I start hearing all these voices down the hallway. And I started walking down the hallway and it got louder as I got down there. And I opened the door to one of my niece's room, and all of the toys were sitting in a circle, and all of the toys that could talk, like that, there's a Miss Drowsy doll that said things, and they were all talking and doing things. And I think about it now, and it scares me to death to think about that because it shouldn't have been happening. There's no way that could have happened. Nobody could have stuck into the house and done that. Right. And the first thing I did, I apologized to the police department. I actually called the police. I was so frightened, and I told them that I thought there was an intruder in the house, but I just wanted to see another human being. I just needed somebody else in the house. I was absolutely petrified. So I know kind of what you're talking about when you see an inanimate object that shouldn't have a quality like that when things happen to it, and how frightening that can be. It is terrifying.
Yeah. It was.
I didn't believe her at first. Yeah, I didn't. I thought she was just making up this story, because she missed her sister and she wanted some attention. But my younger brother Gary also saw it, and oh my
Mhm.
gosh, he has so many stories to tell. I was hoping that he would either be here or call in to us tonight and tell some of his stories. I think he was the
Well, it
one that
sounds like there's
saw the
enough
most
stories for another show somewhere along the way.
yeah. Yeah, I think he was the one that saw the most activity. Maybe we can get him to record some of his stories. And
Absolutely, that'd be fantastic.
Mhm.
Well, actually, speaking of that, I just want everybody that's watching the show out there. If you do have some type of ghost story that you want to share, or you may want to bring on the show, please feel free to let me know. Take it to record yourself for 2 to 5 minutes. Send it on into the show. You have my Gmail address. You can send it to rapainley@gmail.com. Or you can get it to Enlightened World Network, and we will take a look at those and see if there's something that we can use as a teaching tool for other people when you're afraid. Yeah, that's how I kind of want to end the show here a little bit. Is Teri, what was your takeaway from all of that? What did you learn from these experiences? There had to be a little bit of not so much trauma because you could see and sense as you got older, you kind of knew that. But what did you take away from that experience? And what would you do differently, or what would you recommend to anyone that has that experience going on in their home now?
great question. So I had always, from my earliest memories, I would talk to the angels. I knew their energy. I knew, they were pure love, and I felt really warm and good from them. So it helped me to discern as well different energies. So I knew what angelic energy felt like, and then I knew what this other energy, I didn't have a full understanding of that growing
Okay,
up,
sure.
but now I do. Now I comprehend. We're spirit. These bodies are just temporary. We
Sure.
are spirit, and when we
Absolutely.
body leaves, we're still there. We don't leave. We don't go anywhere.
Correct.
Hopefully, we'll cross over. But there are those that are, for whatever reason, still meandering around, and I really, in hindsight, I would have loved to been able to help some of those that were just passing through, just wandering through, and maybe just wanting to see what was there, just curiosity. Some of it's prankster type of energy. They're bored, they're having fun.
Yeah. And,
But
once they realize that you're paying attention, they will continue to do like the dancing of an object. Once they know they've got your attention, they will continue to do it because they know that you're paying attention. So.
Mhm.
And Sheila, what is kind of you? Are you still learning something? What would you kind of do differently, or maybe ask differently, or would you have ever thought about going to your parents at this juncture, looking back on your life and how it's affected you in this process?
I don't have the insight that Teri does. I don't have what she has. But so I probably wouldn't have done anything differently. I probably wouldn't have went to my parents with it because I don't think they would have got it
Okay.
from me. But I think that fear is a big thing. I think that used to I was like, creeped out, and now I'm not. I'm just
Okay.
kind of like, okay, I understand.
Well,
There is.
imagine a young viewer out there now watching who may be 12, 13 years old. What would you suggest that they do? Because again, you don't have Teri's insight and her
Right.
gift. But from your perspective, because you don't have the gift, but you're seeing these things, what would you suggest these young people do, or even older people do? I mean, you're still seeing things in your house at this age. What do you feel you need? Is there anything that people can do to help, or is there something that we can all do to make you more comfortable in your own home? That's my
Right.
personal, what I'm trying to help people with. So how could I or
Yeah.
Teri or somebody else who's a medium help you at this juncture with this sort of thing? I know
I
Teri is
think
already, but what would you suggest to people who don't have that type of help in their family?
I think just investigate it. Just, go to somebody. Maybe if it's not somebody in their family, go to somebody else who knows, who understands it. I spoke to people that I didn't know, besides my sister, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I get it because this happened to me." So more people have that than just and see the spirits and feel the spirits than we realize. So
Sure.
you don't have to keep it to yourself. I'd say investigate it and talk to people and see what you find out.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that's great advice because, when I was younger, it wasn't something that was talked about so freely. Now with the internet and that sort of thing, there's this show and Enlightened World Network and other places where you can get information that you just couldn't find out. I mean, when I was growing up, I had a book of encyclopedias that were 10 years old sitting on a shelf. Yeah. That was my resource material, right? I didn't have any real resources to look up this type of information. It was kind of, people thought you were crazy if you talked about it, so nobody did talk about it. It wasn't out in the open. Right. But now with the advent of the internet, there's so many more resources out there for people. And you're right. Look, investigate. Find the information. Mm-hmm. But I would caution people out there too. It's kind of looking on WebMD, right? You have a bunch of symptoms, and then all of a sudden you get this horrible disease that you can possibly have, but the human mind kind of goes to worst case scenario. So I would kind of just caution people who do try to do their own investigation to do find somebody maybe that they could talk to as well, because looking things up on the internet, you can find a lot of information out there that could scare the Jesus out of you. Yeah. and you don't need that. You're already having a situation that may be causing you trouble. You want to make sure that you're finding legitimate information that could lead to an end, because there's people, even in what Teri and I do, who may, who are sometimes unscrupulous and will try to take advantage of people. You don't want that. You want somebody who knows what they're talking about, who is a true medium, who can go and try and resolve the issue in your home. I think you're absolutely right. I think that's great advice for people. And that coping thing that you had to do when you were a child, that I had to do as a child as well. I think, I would advise parents also to listen to their children. I think, as a lot of times where children go through a phase, quote unquote, where they have imaginary friends and that sort of thing, and the parents try and blow it off and not pay attention to it. And I want parents to take that seriously sometimes. Ask the questions, because if that child is actually telling you things that the child couldn't possibly know, it's not an imaginary friend, because imaginary friends, they can't, and if a child has an imaginary friend, it can't take something that the child doesn't have an understanding of or could have an understanding of and put that into a role play scenario. If the child is telling you something about things that they possibly couldn't know about, this guy's an accountant and he's showing me, if he knows nothing about accounting, he's talking about ledger books or something that this person's showing, that would be an indication of what they're seeing is actually spirit. So I want people to kind of use this an eye here and truly listen to their children, to what they're saying, and take an objective aspect of it and saying, what could my child possibly, again, with the internet, children are much smarter now than they were when we were growing up. Again, if I couldn't read it in an encyclopedia or I didn't hear from my friends, it just didn't exist as information. Now they can hear things, on the internet, and there's all kinds of, from conspiracy theories through reality that are out there. So just take an objective eye as to what your child has access to, the information, and if that information couldn't possibly be acquired from their frame of reference, it may be an indication truly that they are involved with some type of interaction with spirit in some way. So it's kind of one of those key indicators for me when I do work with children and work with adults who are having issues in the home. I will talk to the children that way. And also another aspect would be if the child changes personality in some way. In my own family, we've had, where some negative spirits have gotten into the house, and we'll try to influence the children to get them to do things that they normally wouldn't do, that would be out of character for the children. So as you see kind of a huge personality switch, they're either, moody, teenagers are always moody, but from the aspect of, having a child who becomes disrespectful for no reason or starts to lash out for no reason. It doesn't have to be spirit. Those could be medically related, or it could be just the friends that they're being around. But kind of, look at also potential spirit aspects for things that are happening with your children at home. That's not always, I'm pretty objective myself when it comes to, when I go to a client's house, I look for what the reality might be. So I look at it from a realistic point of view. And then and if I can't find a rational answer, then I'll look more to the spiritual if I don't sense anything walking into the home right away. So, don't always look for spiritual, look for the rational, but if there isn't a rational explanation, don't discount the possibility that it could be spirit related. And then what do? Exactly what you said. Do some investigative work, try to figure out from that perspective, how I find the resources or find someone maybe that can help me. So I appreciate that. It's really great insight. Thank you, Sheila. I appreciate it.
I'm glad that you went there, Robert, because we, in our family, we didn't feel that we would be listened to. It's like our parents weren't approachable with stuff like that.
Absolutely.
That would have just been like silliness, instead of seeing how scared their children were and seeing that this was something that, I mean, they had to have heard it. Everybody in the house heard it.
Sure.
So it had to have been that, but they weren't approachable enough for us as children to go and get the comfort that we needed, in that time. So for any children that are going through that you don't feel safe to open up, just, try to get that attention, try to somehow get your message through that this is something that's real, that's really happening there.
I think you bring up a perfect point. I think this is a great time to discuss it a little bit, or just at least mention it. When I go into those types of situations with homes, a lot of times what happens is that the parents are afraid, don't know how to explain it, don't know how to deal with it, and don't want to frighten the children. So they're holding on to it and not wanting to say anything because they're assuming that children don't hear, see, or sense anything else, and they don't want to scare the children, so they don't say anything. The children are too afraid to go to the parents because they don't think they're going to be believed, or they think that their parents are going to yell at them, or that's going to be considered silly. So both ends of both those generations sometimes they clash and they don't mix. Be open as a family. Be willing to talk to your children about it, and find a way that's age appropriate for your children to understand. If your child is a teenager, for example, you can say, "Hey, I'm hearing footsteps. You guys hear footsteps outside last night?" You can ask them, not from a scary perspective, but just matter of fact. From a small child, it may be more appropriate to say, sometimes I hear things in the house, and sometimes, a lot of times it's mommy, daddy. Does that ever scare you? No, and open up a conversation a little bit where, no, but sometimes I see things out, and I hear things outside the house. Oh, really? And see if you can try and find a way to get the information that you need so that you can be a true parent. I mean, you don't want to scare your children. I understand that. Everybody out there, nobody wants to scare their children. But if you're having these types of issues, and I run into this all the time, where children are frightened, and the adults too, so to some extent, are frightened or skeptical. And either way, whether they're frightened or skeptical, they resist going out to find the answers to the situation going in the home. But understand that your children are suffering a lot through this process. They're always smarter than you think they are. They know more than you think they do. All of these things are going on in the background of the house. And so just be realistic that if you're hearing things and you're afraid, don't assume that you're the only ones in the house doing it, that your children are more than likely having this experience as well, and more than likely at a heightened level. And they could be terrified at night, like you would. Cover your head at night with the covers, and I did the same thing. You cover your head, just pray it goes away, and you start saying the Our Father or whatever, or just, you sit there and you cry and just say, please go quickly, please go away, please go away. Do whatever you can to try and or I used to stay awake all night because I was afraid to go back to sleep. So if it's traumatizing you as an adult, imagine what that could be doing to your child. Don't assume that you're the only ones hearing or sensing, and try to make it better, because the spirit actually has more power to it if it's a nasty or a lower energy. And they take advantage of the fact that there is that tension in the house, and they want to up that sometimes and up that fear level. So they're trying to keep, so what helps protect you as a family is the love and the sharing and the belief with one another. So the more you elevate that feeling of love in the house and acceptance, the less you're going to have to deal with this lower vibration energy. So kind of one of those hints out there that I want everybody to consider to make your house a more comfortable environment for yourselves. Okay.
And Robert, sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
One of our listeners, Diane, who was with us at Enlightened World, said that they used to have visits in the house, and one of her daughters, who was wide open to spirit, shut down after she had a scary experience. So that's another thing. And I know on one of your shows you talked about what could be a potential block for us opening up to our gifts, and that's definitely one of those things.
Absolutely. I talked on, I think it was the last show of the Haunted Pajama Party, where I shut down. My gift is strong. I knew I was protected, but it still scared me enough to shut it off for a while, because it was too challenging to live with in some ways. Even though I never stopped seeing, I just tried to tune it out, right? And it did affect me for a long time. I would not probably be doing this today were it not for another medium telling me, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Stop it, knock it off. They're telling us about your fear of protection, your inability to be able to control this. Let me tell you what they're telling me. And once you have the information, everything will be fine. And it was. But it took even me, who has done this all my life, to be able to and willing to find the help of another medium or someone else to help me in that regard. So it is important, find the information. Sheila was absolutely right. Find out information for yourself, but don't be hesitant to reach out to people. Go to, a local spiritual store or something. They will put you in touch with the resources. They understand that this sort of thing happens all the time, and that people want answers, and they're looking for answers, and they're there to help you and guide you. So, do try and find resources. It's great that, Enlightened World Network is here to help people find, people like yourself and myself and others who that has the gift and can help other people. It is a gift. And I think that we have to really take advantage of the things that are presented to us now in this day and age.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to get a cough here. By the way, I want to tell everybody out there, last week we had, Mark made a really good drink. It was a raspberry vodka with raspberry cranberry in it. And today, just so you know, he calls it, what did you call this, Mark? A pomtini. So it's pomegranate and blueberry juice with a little bit of Schweppes and a little bit of vodka and a squirt of lemon. Absolutely delicious. So I've been enjoying it. So keep score at home, and we'll tell you more about the cocktails we're making as well, because we want you to feel comfortable, enjoy the stories that we're telling on the show. And I really want to thank Sheila. Thank you for joining us, Sheila, and sharing your experiences and your stories. I appreciate it so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And Teri, thank you again so much for everything that you do. I don't know if people know that Teri's the wizard behind the scenes for this show. And not only is she doing and hosting her own shows, but she's helping me out do this. So Teri, thank you so much for all you do, for your help in getting this broadcast and helping people in yet another way. You're amazing. So I really appreciate your time and your effort. Thank you.
You're so welcome. And thank you for having us on tonight, Robert.
Thank you. So I'll see everybody next week at 7 o'clock on Spirit Focus with Robert Painley, at Tuesday at 7 o'clock next week. Next week, we've got 3 different possibilities of guests. So not sure what direction we'll go. We'll let it be a little bit of a surprise, but watch for my updates during the week. We've got a variety of really interesting guests coming up here that are going to talk about their experiences with spirit, as well as we continue to move forward in the series. So thank you all for joining us at home. Thank you very much. Thank you, Teri and Sheila, again. Love you, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Robert. And Rosie says she's looking forward to enjoying that cocktail when she comes to Miami.
I'll share one with her shortly, I'm sure.
All right. Bye,
Bye, everybody.
Have a great night.
Good.